Hey, hello, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of getting students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I work at IE Business School Publishing, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Wow, and today we have this amazing expert, Michael Wu. Michael, are you prepared to engage?
Yeah.
Let's do this. So the engagers, this audience that we have here in Professor Game, is very interested in getting to know your background. So who is Michael Wu? Dr. Michael Wu has served as the chief scientist at Lithium over the past decade. He had been focusing on developing predictive and prescriptive algorithms to extract insights from social big data. His research spans in many areas, including customer experience, CRM, online influence, gamification, digital transformation, AI, etc. His research and development won him the recognition as influential leader. Sorry about that. As an influential leader by CRM Magazine, along with Mark Zuckerberg, among other industry giants. Well, that's mainly what he's doing. He has a triple major undergraduate degree in applied math, physics, and molecular cell and biology. His Ph.D. from UC Berkeley in the Biophysics program. He was a Doe Fellow at the Alamos National Lab. He has done a fellowship under the Computational Science and Graduate Fellowship. I mean, he's done all sorts of amazing things, and he certainly believes in knowledge dissemination and speaks internationally at universities, conferences, and companies. His experiences and insights have inspired many global enterprises and are made accessible through The Science Social and The Science of Social 2, his two easy reading ebooks. So, Michael, is there anything I missed from that intro that you want to bring up before we start the interview?
I think that's pretty comprehensive. Yeah, I think there's one thing that you probably mispronounced, that DOE is actually is just DOE. It's actually the Department of Energy. In the
Department of
United
Energy.
States, yeah.
Fantastic. So, Michael, the first thing that we would like to know is what does a regular day with you look like? We want to get to know you a bit more, just on these simple things, to understand how your life goes. So, how would you say a regular day with you goes like?
Well, that's actually a very tough question, because for me, I don't think there is a regular day, because I think that the work that I do is actually pretty diverse. It ranges from something that's very, very technical to very developing algorithms or analyzing data, huge data sets. So that's requiring me to kind of sit in front of a computer, just spend I would say tens of hours just looking at data and applying statistical algorithms and try to extract information and insights that are hidden. So that's one type of work that I do. But then it could be another day. It could be just traveling out to see customer. It could be waking up at 4 a.m. Getting ready, going to the airport and flying to a different country, and then meet the customer, and then and then after the meeting, you basically fly back. And by the time you get back, it's probably 7 to 8 or maybe even 9 p.m. So, and then the next day you may have to fly to see another customer. So you repeat.
Rinse and repeat.
Yeah, so it's very different, from day to day. And then sometimes I need to write, and sometimes I to have interview with journalists or Professor Game. And certain other days, I may actually be doing some design work with product, and so it's actually quite a variety of work. I think I think that's a nice thing that there is no regular day. Because that's what makes my day very interesting.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing. And Michael, this is not the regular question that we make, but we were talking a bit in the pre-chat, and we were talking about your background, what you mainly do, and you're very dedicated to data in general, big data, small data, social data. And I wanted to ask you how from that you came to actually be also as well involved in gamification. What's your background? How did all these things get together?
Yeah, so my background is actually, not in gamification. Like I don't have a lot of game design experience. I don't have a lot of, behavior science experience. Those are not my training. I would say that I picked those up afterward. Initially, I'm just a data scientist. Like I've been doing data science before data scientist was even a term in the industry. And yeah, I mean, I think during my PhD days, basically, I look at big data that's measured from the brain. I try to model, how the human brain process visual information, like to understand how we see things, how we recognize objects, recognize people. So that's kind of what I do during my PhD. Basically, it's just what people call data science nowadays. But back then, it was just basically called machine learning and statistics. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and from I mean, so since I would say coming into the industry after my PhD, uh, I work in Lithium, which is a social media company that provides a community platform um, for big brands. So brands like that, people would know, like HP, AT&T, Google, and all these are, I would say, um, company that have a lot of customers and consumers that use their product. And so I'm very interested in like applying these data science techniques to understand people's behavior, right? Trying to understand like what they do, why they do it, and why they choose their particular kind of trajectory. And so basically, this is kind of my, one of the things that I do, as I mentioned before, right? Just analyzing data but once you look at a lot of data, you start to kind of, I would say, um, you start to build models. You start to, uh, be able to kind of have a sense of what people's behavior might be even in the future, right? Because once you have a model, then you can use the model to make predictions, right? So you could say, okay, this person might look like, it looks like that he might actually go down a particular trajectory, and that one go down a different trajectory. So, um, so that's very interesting because once you have a model, right, you have an eye into the future, right? And uh, with that, you could kind of, what the question that came up that's really interesting is like, well, if you know a person's going to go down a particular trajectory, right, can you change that, right? Can you actually also change the behavior such that they go down a better trajectory or a trajectory that's actually, more beneficial for them and for the brand and for everybody, right? Um, so that's the question that I was thinking for a while, and then I kind of was doing some research, like trying to change behavior, and then that's when I actually stumble upon these wonderful technology called gamification. Basically, yeah. So to me, that's gamification is all about like using these game thinking techniques, right, to actually change people's behavior, right, and whether it's behaviors inside a company in employee engagement, or is it for engaging a brand or yeah, or just pretty much anything in life, just changing people's behavior in general. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
absolutely.
how I stumble upon gamification. Is I would say it's a little bit accidental.
Yeah.
Just yeah, it's trying to solve a problem that I wanted to solve, right? But then I did some research and then I just got into it. Yeah. So.
It's really interesting because one of the things that we always discuss here in the podcast with our guests is how the gamification can help their, for example, many of the listeners are teachers, professors, people in the educational area.
Hmm.
So we're always thinking about how can we use gamification to, for example, improve engagement of the students in the class. So of course,
Hmm.
if you have all that data, that maybe it's not processed as you would have in a system, but you've been having experience throughout the years in your class, and you kind of know where your students are heading most of the times. You kind of know where they're going to fall. You kind of know where they're going to be disengaged. That's
Hmm.
sort of a big data that you have in your head, and
Exactly.
it's a way of understanding where all these things are going and a way to improve them. I mean, using gamification can help you improve all that engagement, improve the way that things are going, and help you improve your class, make something amazing of it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is actually one of the things that I tell people, people always make decisions with data. Like we may not have these data stored in a hard drive in a computer, but we store in our head, right? And those big data are what we used to call experience, right?
Hmm.
So, and we build models all the time. We may not actually build a statistical model that's using machine learning or deep learning nowadays, but we use our mental model. We build a model inside our head, and kind of make predictions that way. So it's actually things that we've been doing, and I think the discipline of machine learning and statistics just make that really rigorous and apply mathematics onto these this discipline that this behavior that we do anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Michael, the next question I would like to know is for you to tell us a story of a time when you were using gamification or you were using big data and gamification, and something it didn't go as expected. You would almost call it a fail, a first attempt in learning, and we would
Hmm.
like to know what happened. How do you come out of it with the final success? Just for you to tell us that story and see what we can learn from it.
I see. Yeah. So let me think about this because there's actually many different failures I encounter.
You don't have
I'm
to
just
name
thinking
any
which
names,
one.
of course, any company.
Okay.
Nobody needs to feel bad about what we talk about here.
Yeah.
It's more of a learning experience.
Okay. So I would say that there's so over the year I have compiled I would say some of the learnings that I learned both myself and also like some of the company that I work with. I compile them into what we call the tenets of successful gamification. I think these are I would say common failures or common things that people often overlook and that led them, to I mean that basically led to the I would say failure of their gamification initiative. And then so I think there's 10 of them. So I don't, I'm just thinking like which one should I actually choose to talk about? I think one that's really I would say a little bit counterintuitive initially for me is the one that you know that I think I'll share right now. I mean, it's the one where it says that like basically the better something works, the faster you have to change it.
Hmm.
That's a tenet, yeah, in gamification. So in most business setting, it's actually kind of I would say most in the most business setting, most people will tell you that if it ain't broken, don't change it, right? Or don't mess with it, right? So if things are working great, just leave them be, right? Don't do anything and don't change it. But in gamification, that's actually a death trap. Okay, so it's one of those things that's a little bit counterintuitive because you say, oh, gamification. I have my gamification, initiative or a program or plans, and I roll it out, and it's working great. It's engaging our customer, and that's wonderful, right? And
Yeah.
then you think that you could just keep that going, and then the thing is that like gamification is kind of interesting because it has to do with people's behavior, right? And the thing that's I would say one of the most fascinating thing about people that's different from a lot of other other subjects, right? Is that we learn and we adapt and we kind of change, right? So that's makes the system very unique in a way that like what it actually work, right? So when you're trying to use gamification to change people's behavior, right? Whether it is, for example, let me just use an example, right? Say you want to use gamification, for example, to engage like consumers, like in a marketing initiative. Right? You're trying to drive people to engage with your brand through your marketing campaign. And so you design maybe some clever gamification around it, right? People could earn points, badges, and get on leaderboard. And when they actually engage and share and socialize, and so it's all great, right? So the thing is, so you may think that, okay, wonderful, now I'm done, right? So that's actually really dangerous because in gamification, uh, better things work, right? That means you have to start thinking about the next game, you know,
The next step.
fast sooner, the next step sooner. You know, the reason is because people, you know, like I said, people learn, people adapt, and then people get tired of things, right? So basically, the more engaging a game is, right, the more they will play, right? And then the more they will play means that they will actually adapt and kind of get tired of it faster, right? So that's something that's, I would say, a little bit counterintuitive, you know. So I mean, yeah, but in fact, it really is the case, right? Because if it's a really engaging game, a lot of people will play, and then a lot of people will get, you know, I would say, habituated. You know, like basically they essentially get, you know, oh, okay, now I played it 100 times. I'm starting to get a hang of this, and then the more I play, and then I start to get even like I would say even get bored of this, right? And then people quit, right? So basically, the faster you I mean, the better a gamification work, right? That means the faster you have to start to think about your next step, you know, to think of the next thing to keep the user continue to engage, right? That's different, slightly different, right? So, for example, you may, for example, you know, initially people could start essentially doing something to start to get, I would say, points, badges, and leaderboards, and these are very simple gamification techniques that I think most people try initially, right? Then the next thing is that you have to do is you have to think about, well, what next, right? What's
Yeah.
next, right? I mean, can they do something different, and can they do, you know, what if they don't follow your trajectory? What if they slow down, right? So these are kind of things you have to start to think about, you know. Um, so I
Yeah.
would say that, you know, this is a failure that I make personally because I fall into this death trap as well. You know, like basically, you know, we were designing this gamification around actually, in fact, engaging customers through a marketing campaign, right? And then so it works really well, you know. And then my thinking is that okay, if it works well, then let's just wait and see, right?
Don't
And
mess
then,
with it.
yeah, don't mess with it, right? And then yeah, lo and behold, right? Basically, the faster it works, I mean, the faster it's quicker, the better it works. That means the faster people will get tired, and
Yeah,
and
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 that's
it's
something
basically.
to consider. And I think it's sorry to jump in, Michael. And I think it's very important. I was thinking because I was trying to think of maybe a counter argument, and I was thinking, well,
Hmm.
maybe for example, if what you have are students and they're changing, like you have them for 6 months or for 3 months or for a year, you say, well, but
Hmm.
next year you can start all over again. And yes, but if your solution is super engaging, if whatever you create for your classroom is super engaging, they'll get through it very fast, as you are saying. So
Exactly.
you have to think
Yeah.
of the next step.
Exactly. Yeah. So the thing is, I think, you know, in school the setting is a little bit different, right? Because these are, I would say, there are structures around like learning materials and curriculums and everything.
And they're
So
kind of
it
captive
has.
in a way.
Yeah, it's they're captive, and there's a little bit of, I would say, a kind of, I would say, a predefined curriculum, and or kind of a trajectory that they follow, right? And whereas in a lot of these gamification, where it's applied in whether it's employee engagement or, you know, or engaging the consumers and customers, it's the behavior is actually more voluntary, right? So they could do as little as they want, and they can also do as much as they want. So I think this is probably applies more in those settings where, you know, yeah, if its game is really engaging, then they just, you know, they just do them all, you know, like in a day, right? And then they could have done like a entire year of coursework in a week, right? And then your students say, okay, now what's next?
Yeah.
What can I learn next, right? And then you say, I don't have anything. I have to wait until next year for your class to begin. And then they say, oh, you know, and that's a disappointment. And they could just, you know, if a student, you know, they have to still sit in the class, right? But if it's a consumer, they could probably just go off and don't come back, and then you lose a consumer there,
Yeah,
right?
no,
So it's
and you can lose the
yeah.
student as well. The engagement of a student is something that we have to caress very much, and we have to take care of their attention span and all that.
Yeah, to some extent, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, the fact that, you know, students are a little bit captive, like you said, it's makes it a little bit easier because they have to, they're captive there until you have a little bit of time to think about, what to
Something
do
new.
next.
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of keep them engaged. And that's what teachers and professors do, really well, But then, yeah, for I would say nowadays, consumers, people are, I would say, they're fickle, right? Their attention span is short. Once you kind of start, you know, once they start to feel any kind of disinterest, right, then they may leave and they may never come back, right?
Yeah.
And when
Absolutely.
they do that, right? I mean, no matter how much you try to re-engage them, you say, oh, you send them an email, they say we have this new thing, and then once they start feeling bored, then they say, oh, it's probably the same thing, and they're going to delete your email, and they're not even going to try, right? So, yeah.
They're done.
So that's really dangerous. So, yeah,
The,
yeah.
the the next thing we would like to know, Michael, because we've been going through the one of the tenets that you have. So before we go into
Hmm.
the next question, I would like to know: is there anywhere we can go to find out about the other 9 tenets of gamification?
Yeah, I will have to say that like I wrote some of them in my blog when I was still at Lithium. So if you actually Google for Michael Wu Lithium
Okay,
blog, you will probably find some of those tenets there.
we'll put
I
it in the
don't
show
have,
notes. Yeah.
yeah, I actually do not have all 10 of them written down anywhere. I mean, yeah, so the tenets are, I would say, sometimes I actually present them in workshops, and depending on the length of the workshop, I would present like one, two, or, five or seven. So I actually, yeah, so some, if you have a really, I would say a long enough workshop, like a couple of days long, yeah, then it's enough to go through all 10 of them. Yeah, but
Well, it's a good idea for a book. No.
yeah, totally. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, in terms of like the other nine, I mean, yeah, some of them you probably have to get them through a workshop. I have written about maybe I would say 6 or 7 of them in the community. Yeah, I think the rest, I think, yeah, either people get them through a workshop or something like that. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
Michael, I would like to make a quick run through if you have any process and run us through how would you design a gamification solution? What are the
Mm,
steps or the system or the process that you follow? Can you run us quickly through that process?
I see. So I think the most important thing I would say is to start from consumers' behavior that you're trying to change, right? So I think that's um, something that I find that a lot of people often overlook as well. It's also one of the tenets that I talk about. It's I think a lot of kind of gamification practitioners, right? When you talk about um, what they're trying to do, right? I think they all know what they're trying to do. I think um, but very often they forget that the business outcome that they're trying to drive is actually not the same as the behavior that you're trying to drive with the people that you're trying to gamify. Okay, so a lot of times people would say that, okay, oh, I want to gamify my marketing campaign. I want to gamify my classroom, and I want to engage a student, right? So basically, that's actually, um, you know, a business outcome, right? A result, almost like like when you have engaged students, when you have engaged in customers, this is the outcome, right? It's actually not the behavior that you actually want to drive. So for example, in the classroom setting, I talk about marketing before, so let's switch context a little bit. Talk about engaging a classroom, right? So right? So you want to engage your students. So what does that mean, right? I mean, so you have to start to think really hard. What does the engagement in student really mean? What does it look like, right? An engaged student will exhibit what kind of behavior, right? So you have to ask yourself that, right? So basically, that consists of a lot of things. It's not just one behavior, right? It involves, okay, coming to class on time, coming to school on time, attend all the classes, coming to classes on time, do your homework, right? Ask questions, right? And maybe answer questions that the teachers ask, right? So it involves a lot of behavior. It's not just one behavior, right? If you only do one thing, right? For example, I only do my homework, but I never answer any question in class, never and talk to any students in the class, right? That's not as good, right, as an engaged student, that you would imagine, right? So you have to start think about all the behavior, I call this granular behavior because they have to be pretty granular, right? They
Yeah,
have
it
to
has to
be,
cover all
you
the
know,
points, no?
yeah, exactly. You have to cover every, all the possible behavior that, maybe exhibit by some, but not all students, right? So some students may actually start, maybe they're the top student in the classroom. Maybe you want them to help other students, right? So that's a way to engage other students, right? So maybe some other people, or for example, if they need help, you want them to ask for help, right? So that you can help them, right? Or other students can help them, right? So I think all you have to think really hard. This is actually the most difficult step is to actually think of all the granular behavior that you want to drive, right? And basically list them out, every single behavior, right? And then try to the next step I would say, like, once you have them list out, I would say, like, is to think of a way to quantify them, right, and measure them, right? Because the next tenet that I often talk about is basically you cannot change behavior that you cannot measure. Okay,
Hmm.
it's actually a saying that I think, I believe it's Lord Kelvin who said that you can't change something that you cannot measure. So same thing with behavior, right? If you have a behavior that you don't measure or you cannot measure, basically you almost have no chance of changing it, right? I
Or
mean,
at least
even
you
if
won't
you,
know if you changed it or not, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes you might be able to change it, but that's probably through sheer luck, right? You can't change it reliably, right? So I would say that, it's to think of way to measure and then implement those measurements, right? And then think of, how you're gonna implement those measurements in a way that's kind of non-intrusive, and also kind of, in a way, kind of interesting and fun, right? And then you have to think about, how you're gonna feedback to the student or anyone that you're trying to engage, right? Or gamify. So yeah, I think this is how I start. I think the process is actually pretty long and involved, right? And yeah, I think it would take me an hour to just go through the entire process. Yeah,
Okay,
but I
okay,
think,
fair enough.
start with the behavior, right, and granular behavior, and then the next step would be to think of how do you quantify them, how do you measure them, right? And if there is actually steps that you feel that you cannot measure, then what you need to do is that you have to kind of go back and think of some other behavior that you may use as a proxy for this behavior that you're trying to measure, right? For example, in a student, you may say, okay, I want them to, be nice to other friends, right? Other students in the classroom, right? So, I mean, how do you measure that? That's actually pretty hard, right?
Yeah.
How do you measure being nice, right? That's actually not something that's very easily measured, right? So like I said, right, if you can't measure it, you can't change it, right? You can't improve, you can't actually make your student nicer to other students, right? So 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 if that's the case, right, then you have to go back and start thinking about, well, what is a proxy and some other behavior that could serve as a proxy that's actually being nice to students. For example, helping other students, and I mean, then you can start to measure, right? How many times have you helped students, right? How many, so those are kind of things that you have to think about, right? How many times you have helped students? How many students have you helped, right? So these are things that you start to being able to measure. They are not, exactly being nice to other students, right? But they're a proxy, right? So you can use that as a proxy to that behavior of being nice that you're trying to change, right?
Yeah.
So
It makes
yeah, and
sense.
then once you do that, right? Once you have all the proxy, right? That means you should be, by the end of like step two, you should be able to have you should have be able to measure all the behavior, right?
Yeah, you
Or
could almost
at
put it in
least
a
have some
dashboard,
proxy.
no?
Yeah, or have some proxy for it, right? So that have some proxy that you can actually measure, right? And once you have all the measurement, right, then you could think of, feeding back to the students or the whoever that you're trying to gamify, right? And then that's where all the, I would say, using game thinking, leaderboards, points, badges, leaderboard, and all the game mechanics comes in, right? How are you going to feed back this data back to the students? Yeah.
Thank
So
you
I think
very
that,
much for that, Michael. That's super interesting, and I think it's the basis for absolutely more developed thinking that you have. But it's the basis where anybody can pick up from. If
yeah.
you're again in your classroom, as Michael was saying, and this you want the students to do, and you list the things that they want to do. once you at least know what you want to change or where you want to do, again, you have experience that goes into almost into your gut. I mean, we've been developing this for thousands of years, and you understand many of these things, how they're going on, how they're interrelating, what are things that you've maybe tried or stumbled upon before that can help you drive these behaviors. And it's a fantastic first step or initial section to get your gamification started. And I think that's amazing. So thank you very much, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go now into the second part of the interview, and here we'll probably have quicker answers. Just tips, tools, and tactics that people might be able to use, or things like let's start by the first one. If you have, what is your favorite game?
What is my favorite game?
Yes.
Does it matter if it's really old?
No, of course not.
Yeah. I actually like Legend of Zelda.
I love those games.
Yeah, it's actually a long time ago. Probably, I would say maybe more than 10 years ago. Yeah, when they first came out, I really liked the game. Yeah.
The first one's from NES, from Nintendo.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then I think they have newer versions of it now, but I don't play anymore. But I remember, yeah, those I think those are one of the first video games I played. So.
That's an absolutely amazing saga for sure. I mean, I've played the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and 64. After that, I didn't play any more Zelda. Regretfully, I have to say.
Yeah, regretful for both of us.
Absolutely. Michael, is there anybody that you would like to listen to interviewed in Professor Game?
Well, in that case, I think there's a lot of people that I like to listen to in Professor Game, but in this case, I'll give you a professor also. Okay, so I would say that Professor B.J. Fogg is he's actually a friend and a mentor. I actually learned a lot of I would say behavior science from him. So I would like to listen to him on Professor Game. Yeah,
he would be fantastic.
He's actually.
For sure.
He is actually one of those people that I would say, like as I said earlier, that my background is actually not in behavior science or game design or anything remotely related to gamification, right? So I actually stumble upon gamification, and I was learning about like how can you actually change people's behavior, and I believe his behavioral model, basically using the confluence of basically a motivation, ability, and time, right? Basically, when you have all three of those elements happening all at the same time, then you can actually reliably change people's behavior. I use that model tremendously in most of my design work. So I think he would be a wonderful addition to the Professor Game series.
He would be definitely fantastic, and just like Yu-Kai Chao recommended you, and here you are now. And I'm happy that he was one of the people to recommend you. I'm sure we'll have BJ Fogg, and I'll let you know when he's live as well.
Totally. Thank you.
What would you say is your superpower when you design gamification? What's your sweet spot?
Okay, I would say that my superpower is math and data and machine learning. Yeah, I mean, it didn't came to me as a superpower, before, because that's what I've been doing for most of my PhD and my research. And but I think coming into this area, gamification, I felt that a lot of people probably would think that's a superpower, because you can make sense of huge amount of data and build model, predict behavior. I think those seems like a superpower.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It does at least feel like a superpower. Michael, is there any book? What would be one book that you would recommend to the engagers, and why?
Let me think.
Aside from your two books, of course.
I wouldn't recommend my two books for the engagers. I would say that those are. I think I certainly wrote about gamification in my books as well, but I would say that those are kind of written for a less technical audience, and I would say for people who are just getting into the field and to understand what can be done. But I would say I would like to read something like completely different. Like I would recommend like maybe Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational. I would recommend that. Yeah, because that's actually a very different take on behavior. So we often think that human behavior are rational. Like we are rational being, we behave rationally, but that's actually not the case. We are actually very irrational, and in fact, we are predictably irrational. Right? We actually irrationally our behaviors are irrational over and over again. That it's actually predictable. Yeah. So I would recommend that, for people who are trying to understand behavior and try to, whether you're a practitioner of gamification or not, I think it's a very interesting read regardless.
It absolutely is.
Have you read it?
Yes, I've started reading it. I haven't completed it. I always have this problem of having too many books I'm about to finish reading. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting book.
Totally. Yeah, I had the same problem too. So, too many books and too little time to actually read them. So
yeah, I could just retire for a whole year and just spend every day for a year just reading the books I want to, and I would be completely happy with no problems.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I think right now, one of the things, now that I left Lithium, one of the things I like to do is to actually listen to some of the audiobooks and ebooks that I've collected over the year, but didn't have time to
that you have
read.
Neglected over the years.
Yeah, I have been trying to make time for it, but never really had time, or just when I have time, I'm either too tired or that but now I actually had a little time. I have the luxury to kind of actually go and read them.
Yeah, definitely. Finally, Michael, I would like to know if you have any final piece of advice for the engagers, and then tell us how can we connect with you, and we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I would say follow your passion, would be the advice, because I think that, I would tell people that, I mean, there's probably a lot of advice on, gamification and what to do, and where to start. But I think that, ultimately, I believe that if you follow your passion, whatever you do, is going to come out good, right? I mean, for me, it's definitely the case. If I follow, I love, analyzing data, analyzing behavior data, and understand consumer behavior, right? So those are the kind of things that I love doing, right? Trying to understand things. I'm a scientist, so. And by following that passion, basically it led me to learn about, gamification. You start to learn other things, right? Whatever is necessary to help you understand your passion, right? To help you accomplish or achieve your passion. So if you do that, I think, you can pretty much go a long way. Yeah.
Fantastic.
In terms of like connecting with me, I think the best way is to kind of connect with me on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is, using their messengers or you could, Twitter also works. But I'm a little bit less kind of responsive on Twitter. But Twitter will also work. Yeah.
Fantastic. We will link both contacts for LinkedIn and for Twitter, so that the engagers, if they have any questions, if they want to reach out, if they want to follow you, they can reach you on those social media. Thank you very much, Michael, for your time, for all your insights, for all the experience you shared with the engagers. And it's time to say game over.
Yeah, well, game over. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, bye-bye.
Woo! Engagers, thank you for listening to Professor Game Podcast. If you enjoyed our interview with Michael Wu and you want some more awesomeness, honestly, from Professor Game, then you can go to professorgame.com/subscribe and get started in our email list. That way we can be in contact and you will be the first to know of any opportunities that Professor Game might have for you. Hey, and before you go on to your next game, would you like to get some insights from a professor of game design and gamification? Then listen to Zach Fitzwalter on the next episode of Professor Game. See you there!